Well, I am just loving the horror genre right now. Give me more of that horror. What is up, everyone? We're back again with another review. And this is going to be for the 2021 film Malignant, and this is directed by James Wan and stars Annabelle, Wallis and Maddie, Hasson. Now, this tells the story of a young woman who is terrorised by haunting visions, and things only worsen the more she uncovers. Well, James Wan is back directing horror, and this is the genre I feel like that he belongs to. I mean, kudos for him for branching out with Fast and Furious 7 and Aquaman, but when I heard he was bringing Malignant to our cinema screens, I was all for it, and I had to check it out. And you can really tell Wan is back in the director's chair once again here, because it's just got his name printed all over it. Now, there's so many of them scenes where he does a lot of tension building, scares that come really quickly that you don't expect to happen, or ones that just land right in your face at unexpected moments. I was never really scared, I've got to be honest, but I think that's just the horror fan in me. I've seen so many of these types of films, but what I appreciate about James Wan is that he tries a unique and different approach with these jump scares every time. I mean, they are very well timed, so you don't really know when it's going to happen. But other directors use the same formula each time, and you can just tell a million miles away when it's going to happen. But James Wan, you're never quite sure, and that's what I really like about the way he directs horror. He just knows where to point the camera, doesn't he? And every time you get an inkling of something that may happen, he just seems one step ahead of you there. And there was gasps in my cinema all around. People were jumping in their seats. So even though I wasn't that scared, it did work on a hell of a lot of people there. And there's also some very nice overhead shots and some nice camera pans that work so well for this film. I really appreciated the cinematography here too. The old droopy houses, the autumn leaf-filled streets. I mean, it had a very dark and gothic feel to it. Kind of a haunting feel, if you like. I mean, this is how a horror movie should look. It just has the horror genre stamped all over it. I loved the look of this film. Where Malignant shines most, though, is the story. Now, I think you're best going into this knowing as little as possible, so I'm going to be very brief here, but wow, this was such an awesome concept. Like many of James Wan's other films, The Conjuring and Insidious, you don't quite know what's going on for at least half the runtime, but once Malignant starts to unveil and unravel itself like them two films, you realise that this is something very creative indeed. And when these things start to happen, your mind is kind of blown, especially in the third act there. And as good as them other Wan films are, this one is way more ambitious. Now, this is a very creepy movie, but it's also a bit of a silly one at times. But every time something happens and you feel like it's going to go down that over-the-top horror movie route, James Wan pulls you back in and puts you back to square one and keeps everything grounded and level-headed there. He kind of feeds you these mini story bites and teases the viewer in these terror-filled moments, but it's never too much. It's just all very well thought out. Helped along heavily by that is the pace of the story. I mean, there's never a dull moment or any filler. Everything just keeps moving along very nicely and keeps the viewer invested throughout the entire runtime. Let's just talk about Annabelle Wallis as Madison, our main protagonist here. I thought she gave an absolutely incredible performance. I mean, she genuinely looked scared and terrified throughout this film. Some of the screams she let out and these facial expressions, I mean, she just belonged in this film. She gave a very, very convincing performance as a character who had terrible things happening in her life, and she let the viewer know. But also, when these scary moments aren't happening, I just thought she owned the screen, even if it's just a piece of dialogue or whatever. I thought she was fantastic in this movie. Now, this is a bit of a mixed bag for me, but I just got to mention the CGI. If you've seen the trailer for this film, you will know that sometimes the room around Madison will change and put it in a different location. Now, I thought that was going to be a terrible eyesore going in, and I did fear for that because CGI can really pull me out of a horror film. It's never scary. However, it's mainly just used here for the location change. I thought it was utilised really well, actually. I mean, it didn't look bad at all. However, towards the end, there were some special effects there that just didn't hit the mark, and they looked kind of crappy. which is a shame because, like I said, it was utilised well in the rest of the movie. And it just seemed a little lazy in the third act there on certain moments, which I'm not going to mention, but you'll know when you see the film. Now, talking of the third act, this film here goes absolutely batshit crazy, and I always had that fear in my mind that, yeah, it's gonna go down that silly old horror route like I was talking about before, but no, some of the best scenes in Malignant happen in this third act, and there were some awesome moments. I was loving it. I can't really mention what they are, but there's some very memorable scenes here. But for that last 5 minutes there, does fall down that old trapdoor. There was just a little bit of cringy dialogue involving a certain character, and what felt like a little bit of a rushed conclusion. I just wish they would have hit the nail on the head here for the ending, but it is only them last 5 minutes. It's not terrible. I just wish it was a little bit more thought out. Now the score is kind of out of place as well. It's kind of a great score, but I feel like it doesn't belong in this film. I mean, kind of like someone didn't watch this movie but made the score anyway and put it in there. I felt like Tom Holland and Cherry was miscast, and here the score is miscast, if that makes sense. However, I really did like Malignant. I thought this was a pretty damn solid effort from James Wan, and a very unique one at that. This is something the horror genre needed. It felt very different, I feel, but I do think it's going to be a love-hate film. I hear the couple get up when the movie had finished in my cinema and say, well, that was a load of rubbish, wasn't it? So it's not going to be for everyone. However, I do feel like sometimes that people's judgment is going to be clouded because of that last 5 minutes there. And it kind of did a little bit for me for a minute, but the more I think about it, the more I went home and processed this film, I just thought it was great. I really enjoyed Malignant. I'm just going to go ahead and rate this movie now. I'm going to give Malignant an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed watching this story unfold, and honestly, this is one of the best horrors of 2021 for me. Okay, at the end of these reviews, I always like to leave a little fun fact. Now, a fun fact for Malignant is that as of July 2020, this film was just kept heavily under wraps and not many things were spoken about it. However, it just said that James Wan is exploring a slice of horror like never before. And that turned out to be right. Okay guys, I hope you all enjoyed this review. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a lot more reviews coming, a lot more videos, and if you want to comment about Malignant, leave it down below and I'll reply to every single one of you, I promise. Take it all easy guys. I'll see you all in the next video.